I laughed when I said it, the kind of careless laugh you use to hide something dangerous, something you don't want examined too closely. So what if we just got married? Expecting her to roll her eyes, maybe shove my shoulder the way she always did. But instead, the room went quiet, her breath caught, and she looked at me with a softness that didn't belong to a joke as she whispered, "I thought you'd never ask me." And in that moment, I realized some jokes are just truths that have been waiting years for permission to be spoken. Noah, that's me, the kind of guy who hides sincerity behind humor, who learned early that being the funny one is safer than being the honest one. I'm the dependable friend, the late night call, the person people trust with their secrets because I never ask for more than I'm offered. What I don't admit, even to myself, is that I've been quietly longing for something deeper for years, something I convinced myself I didn't deserve. Clara is my best friend. She's the kind of woman people feel calmer around without knowing why. Thoughtful, observant, emotionally intelligent in a way that makes you feel seen and exposed at the same time. She listens with her whole body. She remembers details no one else does. And she has this habit of loving people in ways they don't always notice until it's almost too late. We've known each other for 8 years, 8 birthdays, 8 cycles of bad dates, career frustrations, and late-night conversations sprawled across mismatched couches. Everyone assumes there's something more between us. We always laugh it off. Too obvious, too complicated, too risky. But the truth is, there's a quiet tension that lives between us, in the pauses, in the way our conversations never really end, only fade into silence. I've always told myself we're just friends, because admitting otherwise would mean admitting I've been afraid. That night, we were sitting in her apartment, the air heavy with comfort and familiarity. Rain tapped against the windows. Nothing special, which is exactly how the most important moments begin. I didn't know then that one careless sentence would crack open years of restraint. I didn't know that jokes can be disguises for hope. Before that moment, before the sentence that changed everything, Claire's apartment had always been our neutral ground, a place where nothing too real was supposed to happen. Soft yellow lamps, a couch that dipped in the middle from years of shared weight, the smell of tea she always forgot she made until it went cold. Clara sat cross-legged on the floor, leaning against the couch, absently tracing the rim of her mug. When she was nervous, truly nervous, she focused on small, harmless motions like that. I noticed it without understanding why it mattered. We were talking about nothing important. Work frustrations, a mutual friend's messy breakup, the kind of conversation you have when you're comfortable enough to let silence interrupt you without panic. Then it slipped out of me. "Well," I said, half smiling, staring at the ceiling instead of at her, "if we're still doing this in 10 years, maybe we should just get married." I laughed, a short, dismissive sound, a verbal shrug. It was supposed to float away. But it didn't. The room changed. The rain outside seemed louder. The silence stretched, not awkward, not empty, but charged. I finally looked down. Clara wasn't laughing. She had gone very still, like someone bracing for impact. Her eyes searched my face, not for humor, but for permission, for truth, for something I hadn't meant to offer, but somehow already had. "I thought you'd never ask me," she said softly. Not playful, not teasing, honest. My chest tightened. The joke collapsed in on itself, leaving something exposed and unprotected. I felt like I had stepped into a room I wasn't prepared to be in. I tried to recover. "I mean, I was kidding. You know that, right?" The words tasted wrong the moment they left my mouth. Clara's smile didn't disappear, but it changed. It thinned at the edges, like something being carefully folded away. She nodded once, too quickly. "Yeah," she said, "of course." But her hands trembled slightly as she stood, turning towards the kitchen, giving me her back. That was new. Clara never turned away mid-conversation. "I should probably make more tea," she added, voice steady in a way that felt practiced. I sat there, heart racing, suddenly aware of everything I hadn't said, everything I'd hidden behind humor. The joke had landed, but not where I intended. Somewhere deep down, I wondered if I had just brushed against the life I wanted and pulled my hand away out of fear. After that night, something shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way tectonic plates move beneath the surface, invisible, inevitable. Clara became careful. She still texted me good morning, still asked about my day, still sent me photos of random things she knew would make me smile. A dog that looked judgmental, a misspelled sign, a sunset that felt too dramatic to ignore. But the ease was gone, the unconscious leaning in, the way she used to fill silence without realizing it. And I noticed because I was suddenly careful too. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I'd overread her reaction. The people say emotionally loaded things all the time without meaning them. I doubled down on being normal, jokes, casual plans, safe topics. That's my pattern. When emotions threaten to surface, I intellectualize them into submission. We met for coffee a few days later, neutral territory, public, safe. She arrived right on time, like always. Clara's punctual because she hates feeling like an inconvenience. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. I launched into a story about work, words tumbling out faster than necessary. She listened, always such a good listener, but she didn't interrupt, didn't tease, didn't add her own stories the way she used to. It felt like talking into a carefully padded room. At one point, I stopped mid-sentence. "You okay?" She hesitated, just a beat too long. "Yeah," she said, "just tired." A lie. Not a cruel one, a protective one. I wanted to ask her about that night, about what she meant, about what I meant, but asking would mean risking the one thing I was sure of, her presence in my life. So I didn't. And Clara, sensing my retreat, pulled back further. She stopped leaning across tables, stopped brushing her knee against mine, stopped assuming I'd always be there. We were both pretending nothing had happened, and it was exhausting.
Before we go any further, take a second to join this family by hitting the subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one of them. I've got another powerful story coming tomorrow, and you won't want to miss it. Now, let's continue. One evening, I scrolled through my phone, hovering over her name, typing and deleting the same message over and over. "Hey, about the other night. I've been thinking about what you said." I didn't mean it as a joke. I deleted them all. Fear is subtle. It doesn't shout. It convinces you that silence is safer than honesty. But silence, I was learning, has consequences too. And somewhere between unsent texts and unspoken truths, the distance between us quietly grew. Not because we didn't care, but because we cared too much and didn't know what to do with it. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. 2 weeks after the joke, after the careful texts and polite silences, Clara called me at midnight. I answered on the first ring. I always do. Clara is the kind of person who never calls late unless she truly needs someone. "Hey," she said, her voice tight, controlled in that way it gets when she's holding herself together with sheer will. "Can you come get me?" I was already grabbing my keys. Her car had broken down on the side of a nearly empty highway, rain slicking the asphalt, streetlights flickering like they couldn't decide whether to stay. When I pulled up, she was sitting on the guardrail, arms wrapped around herself, jacket too thin for the cold. She looked small, vulnerable, human in a way she rarely lets herself be. I didn't joke, didn't ask questions. I just handed her my hoodie, a quiet act of care that carried more meaning than words ever could. The drive back was silent at first, not awkward, heavy. Finally she spoke. I hated that night. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I hated it because it made everything feel possible, she continued, staring out the window. And I don't like hoping for things that can disappear. That was Clara, someone who loves deeply but guards herself fiercely. Someone who has learned that wanting is the fastest way to get hurt. We ended up back at my place. The storm outside was relentless. Her phone was dead. No ride home until morning. Forced proximity isn't dramatic, it's intimate. It's sitting on opposite ends of a couch, the space between you charged with all the words you've been avoiding. We talked, carefully at first, about the past, about how we met, about the comfort we'd built together brick by brick. At some point, the conversation softened, slowed, became honest. "I don't know how to be just your friend anymore," she admitted quietly. Neither did I. The truth was rising, pressing against the walls we'd built, and for the first time, neither of us ran. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, knees drawn up like we were teenagers hiding from something we couldn't yet name. That's when Clara finally told me the part of her story she usually edits out. She talked about her last serious relationship, not the surface version she tells friends, but the real one. How she had loved someone who always treated her like a temporary place. How she kept giving more, softening herself, shrinking her needs so she wouldn't scare him away. How one day she realized she was planning a future with someone who never said we. "I promised myself I'd never be the one who wants more again," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "especially not with you." That broke something open in me, because I have a history too, one I usually hide behind humor. I told her about how I learned early that being wanted conditionally hurts less than wanting fully, how I became the friend everyone relies on because friends don't leave the way lovers do, how joking about marriage felt safer than admitting I'd imagined it seriously, more than once. We didn't touch, not yet, but the air between us felt like a held breath. There was warmth in the honesty, relief, pain too, the kind that comes from finally being seen. At some point, Clara laughed softly. "We're really bad at pretending, you know." I smiled. "We're great at protecting each other, just terrible at protecting ourselves." She rested her head against my shoulder, tentative, like she might pull away if I moved wrong. I stayed still, letting the moment be exactly what it was. Outside, the storm faded into a quiet drizzle. Inside, something steadier was forming. Not certainty, not answers, but trust. Morning light has a way of revealing everything you manage to avoid in the dark. Clara woke before I did. I could tell because when I opened my eyes, she was already sitting at the edge of the couch, hoodie wrapped around her like armor, staring at the window as if it might give her answers. "Hey," I said softly. She turned, smiled, then hesitated, and in that hesitation I felt it, the fracture, the fear returning now that daylight demanded decisions. "I should go," she said, "before we complicate things." There it was, the shatter. Panic surged in me, sharp and undeniable, because letting her walk out now wouldn't keep things safe. It would just make the silence permanent. "Clara," I said, standing, "if you leave without being honest, I think that joke will haunt us forever." She swallowed. "And if we try and lose this?" That was the moment of choice. I stepped closer, close enough that she had to look at me. "I've already been losing you," I said, slowly, quietly. "I'd rather risk everything than keep pretending I don't want you." Her eyes filled, not with surprise, but with relief. "I thought you'd wake up and regret it," she admitted. "I thought I imagined all of it." I shook my head. I imagined it too. I just didn't think I was allowed to want it. Silence stretched, but this time it wasn't avoidance. It was reverence. Then Clara laughed through her tears. "You know what's ridiculous?" "What?" "That I meant it that night when I said I thought you'd never ask." My heart steadied, like it finally recognized its own rhythm. "So, I said, voice unsteady but certain, "what if I ask for real?" She didn't answer with words. She closed the distance herself, resting her forehead against mine, breathing me in like she had been holding her breath for years. "Yes," she whispered, "not today, not with rings, but yes to us." It wasn't fireworks, It wasn't dramatic. It was better. Weeks later, we still moved carefully, learning a new language with familiar vocabulary. Some days we laughed about how obvious it had been. Other days we paused, checked in, chose honesty again. Love didn't arrive like a surprise. It arrived like recognition, like something that had been waiting patiently for courage to catch up. And sometimes when we sit on that same couch, she teases me and says, "You know, you proposed as a joke." I smile and reply, "Yeah, but you answered with the truth." If stories like this stay with you long after they end, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe and stay with us. And before you go, tell me, do you believe love always finds its way back?